Could a frog's butt normalize miracles? You may have noticed an increase in Christian content on TikTok.
Stop letting random people pray for you on this app. You don't know the spirit behind them.
Instagram.
The devil wants you to think he's Spider-Man, but he's not. He's the devil.
And our homeland, YouTube.
Hey guys, I'm Catholic. Why? Hey, sorry, just doing my 6 a.m. prayers. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go read about the lives of the saints.
Gen Alpha, Gen Z, and even millennials are consuming loads of Christian content through their phones and have the workaround for all the old atheist arguments against God. But there's one argument left, one thorn in the side of this new Christian era, the final boss of cognitive dissonance: miracles. Shout out to the problem of evil. Are Christian apologists purposefully shying away from discussing miracles? Is it something people aren't interested in? Is there any rational explanation to share? There's the argument that being an atheist doesn't rid you of the burden of believing in miracles. The Big Bang, for example, is commonly brought up. There are modern anecdotal cases of medical miracles featured in peer-reviewed medical journals in numbers described as phenomena, such as the Lazarus phenomenon or the Lazarus syndrome, in which patients have woken up after hours of cardiac arrest with no CPR, or the 70 inexplicable healings at Lourdes Français. These get my attention, but don't quite calm my skepticism or even match the nature of many miracles in the Bible. These are biased, my inner Richard Dawkins says. Just because science hasn't found the mechanism yet doesn't mean God did it, my inner Christopher Hitchens chimes in. Is there any explanation for miracles that makes it less weird to believe in them? Can I trust my rationality while pledging allegiance to these miracles? Can I be sure I'm not just saying I believe in miracles because I love the other stuff about Christianity so much? What I found looking into this changed my entire view of miracles. What I'm about to share isn't just a quip to use in debate. It's not a poetic way of avoiding the issue. This is a paradigm shift that will make miracles seem more normal than the realization of your own unfulfilled potential. David Hume famously said, "A miracle is a violation of the laws of nature, and as a firm and unalterable experience has established these laws, the proof against a miracle, from the very nature of the fact, is as entire as any argument from experience can possibly be imagined." So, Hume says miracles violate the laws of nature. They halt or suspend the unavoidable patterns around us in order for something extraordinary to happen. It's more nuanced than that, I suppose, what he's saying. But that's the gist, and that's what people take away, I'm guessing. Now, there's an obvious flaw in this argument. It's that since Hume wrote this in 1748, science has replaced several laws of nature with deeper frameworks. Newtonian laws of motion step aside, make way for Einstein's relativity and quantum mechanics. Absolute time and absolute space. Again, Einstein's relativity gotcha. Time doesn't flow at the same rate everywhere. GPS satellites would go miles off track if they didn't correct for relativity every second. Lavoisier's law of conservation of mass. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. This law was created and destroyed by, guess, Einstein. E equals mc squared. It means that energy can become mass, and mass can become energy. Geez, Einstein, you're like the Kendrick Lamar of physics.
Thought you had a law, but I changed them all.
There's more if you want to look them up, but I think that's enough to show that scientific laws are not absolute, universal, or unchanging. Every law we have is a model with boundaries that make it conditional. So miracles aren't required to break the rules of a closed system, only to exceed the boundaries of the limited model with which we measure reality. This is not breaking news to anyone who's heard this debate back and forth about miracles, but this gets us to the point of saying miracles aren't impossible. That's still pretty far on the opposite side of the spectrum from being certain miracles happened. To get there, I want to describe a well-documented event that I don't quite believe was a miracle. That is the case of John Smith. His name sounds pretty made up, but he is a real person who fell through the ice of a lake in Missouri and had no measurable cardiac activity for 43 minutes before his mother prayed aloud at his bedside, and he instantly recovered with no significant neurological damage. The case was well documented and went on to inspire a documentary and even a Fox motion picture with Kate from This Is Us playing the praying mother. Looks like she finally got to make up for killing her dad. What makes me doubt this case's miracle status is not that it wasn't extraordinary or unprecedented, or even that it was inexplicable with current medical knowledge, but that other cases involving hypothermia have ended with similar results since then. It seems the mechanism of the resurrection was hypothermia. We don't know how, but it seems to be consistent. But the prayer shouldn't be completely dismissed in the causal realm. There's a phenomenon reported in clinical studies called placebo-by-proxy, in which patients' health improves because someone close to them believes they will improve. In counterpart, a parent or loved one's lack of expectation or perception that a treatment is effective causes worse outcomes for the patient. So if you have a child or someone dear to you in critical condition, by all means, pray in faith that they'll be healed. That's the best thing you could do for them. But what I want to talk about is this placebo effect at large. It's interesting because it's an example of top-down causation, where events at a higher level of reality, like beliefs and expectations in a conscious mind, trigger changes lower in the body on a cellular level. At the level of neurotransmitters, hormones, immune markers, we usually think of science describing things the other way. Neurons fire, that causes hormones, which causes feelings, which explains behavior. And that happens, but the placebo effect shows sometimes it works in reverse. The top starts the causal link that goes all the way down to the bottom. The whole is more than the sum of its parts. Modern science accepts layered causation. Chemistry is not reducible to particle physics. Biology is not reducible to chemistry. Psychology is not reducible to biology. Physics can't measure a particle in its waveform at the same time as its particle form. Logic can't account for the following sentence: this statement is not provable. There's something called philosophical zombies. A philosophical zombie is physically identical to a human, behaves exactly like a human, has the same brain, neurons, chemistry, DNA, but has no qualia. I don't know how to say that word. I've only read it. It talks, laughs, screams when stabbed, writes poetry, says ouch, but there is no one home. It has no subjective feeling. It's the human without the conscious interiority, which can't be measured according to physics. So this zombie is physically identical to a real human with qualia, with inner experience, according to science, which means that science cannot account for all of reality as it is. A meaning, a belief, an expectation, I will get better, becomes neural activity in the prefrontal cortex and brainstem, which releases endorphins, dopamine, and immune modulators that change the inflammatory response and pain processing. That's top down. The higher level state constrains the lower level machinery. We're used to saying that anything can be explained by lower level causes. Oh, you threw up? That's because you ate bad chicken and the bacteria multiplied, released toxins, irritated the lining of your intestines. Those cells activated inflammatory pathways. Ergo, you spend the night praying to your toilet. But sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes the chicken vomits you into the toilet. No, I'm just kidding. Sometimes the system above directs the systems below. If you see your friend retching over the toilet and you hold her hair, pretty soon you think, hey, I might get sick too. You didn't eat bad chicken. There's no bacteria in your body, but that belief triggers a cascade in the nervous system. The amygdala activates a stress response. The hypothalamus pushes cortisol and adrenaline. The vagus nerve tightens your stomach. You're nauseous and you're cramping and weak. Then you're blasting that ceramic bowl with everything you've got. Not because matter spread through your cells, but because meaning spread through your brain. The higher constrains and shapes the lower. This top-down causation is all around us. For instance, you've probably heard that lizards can regrow tails. But did you know, contrary to what the amazing Spider-Man told us, it's not just the lower level information in genes that structures the regrowth. There's a higher level system called bioelectricity that keeps the pattern of the tail and tells the genes how to regrow the tail and where and how big in proportion to the rest of the body before the genes even know the tail is gone. This is the pattern and constraints of the bigger picture, telling the lower components what to do, top down, not bottom up. You see where I'm going with this?
Donkey! Onions have layers, reality has layers. You get it.
Dr. Michael Levin proved that genes are not at the top of the causal pyramid by regrowing limbs on animals that don't have the developmental trigger to regrow limbs. Levin changed the bioelectric field on the higher level of frogs to regrow quasi-legs with bones and nerves and vasculature, even though adult frogs can't grow limbs naturally. And he did it without altering DNA. The cells simply funneled through the constraints that the field put on them and rebuilt the missing leg rather than the usual blasting the wound with scar tissue like a concrete patch. Levin altered bioelectric voltage gradients in a tadpole embryo so that the tissue that normally becomes skin or gut turned into a fully functioning eye on the tail. There's no genetic editing here, no transplantation of eye DNA, no magical stem cell injections. He simply changed the electrical map of the body to decide what belongs where, and voila, eyeballs a la frog butt. This is insane. This obliterates our idea that all causation comes from lower levels. Cells don't know what they are. The tadpole tail tissue didn't know anything about eyes. It just obeyed an invisible map from above its level, the pattern of the whole. Form is further up the causal river than function. If you haven't torn off your clothes and ran into a church naked yet, you don't quite understand what I'm saying. If reality is not always dictated by the components and machinery that it's composed of, if invisible structures like expectations, goals, system-level relationships dictate the behavior of lower levels, the components, the little pieces of matter and their codes, this means Plato's form, Aristotle's telos, the logos of the Stoics, the nous of the Neoplatonists, and the Christian logos Christ is not a weird exception to the bottom-up pattern of reality, but simply the next level that you would expect from the normal top-down pattern we see all around us. The same could be said of miracles. Miracles don't have to be God stepping in to suspend the laws of physics, but simply imposing an organizing principle from a higher level existence, as we see happen around us normally. Top-down causation, just like what happens at lower levels with human thought, causing illness and recovery, or bioelectric maps causing cells to grow a new lizard tail without built-in instructions, if causation runs top-down, a miracle is not a breach of nature, but a higher pattern steering nature. Of course, the actual phenomena we see around us doesn't explain some of the gospel miracles. I'm not saying Lazarus was resurrected after 4 days of decomposing due to the placebo effect, but it does indicate that there are levels to reality, which implies there is a level higher than we can observe, and that the normal pattern, if it continues, would allow something at that higher level to place a constraint or an organizing principle down into our level for something unexpected to happen. The whole affecting the components. No physical laws on our level need to be broken. This idea that constraints have real causal power and can play offense is analogous to Piaget's work. Piaget, one of the most influential child psychologists in history, noticed that tests for children were only keeping track of correct answers and not incorrect thinking. He suggested that they track the incorrect thinking to find patterns. This is how we've discovered child brain development. There are stages in which constraints shape what a child is able to do and how the child behaves. But later, Karl Friston showed that it works both ways. Instead of physiological constraints shaping the psychology, psychology can create a causal cascade that reaches down and changes physiology. He provided a mechanism for the placebo effect we talked about earlier. That mechanism is expectation. The brain predicts before it perceives. So our expectation for what we will experience actually sets physiological constraints on our sensory input. This can rewrite pain thresholds and immune responses. Your mind constrains your biology into a certain form, the same way a blueprint constrains bricks into a house. In the 7th century, St. Maximus the Confessor proposed that every created thing has its own logos, its own telos, its own pattern that it's reaching toward. Goal. And all of these logoi around us harmonize in the ultimate logos on a higher level, Christ. 21st century science is rediscovering what Greek philosophy and patristic Christianity already inferred with metaphysics thousands of years ago. So instead of Christ simply being a component within reality that does things unexpectedly, a billiard ball on the table, or matter in a closed system, who either breaks physics or use magician's tricks, he could be that higher level pattern, the pattern of the whole, or the constraint that shapes reality on lower levels. He is the bioelectric map that grows a new frog limb without changing DNA, the idea that causes incontinence without food poisoning. He could pull people into the pattern of a healthy body, expand the outcomes of a few loaves and fish, reassert the logos that shaped Lazarus and fill it in with new matter. And eventually, he could bring the mode of human nature up to a higher level from which he came. It's like we're an iPhone running on low battery mode. Dim, slow, limited features, and eventual shutdown. And he plugs us in. We're the same phone, but now there's full brightness, unlimited processing, stable power, and the battery percentage goes up instead of down. Now, that's not to say that science proves the miracles described in the gospel happened as described, or that I've discovered the precise mechanics of how they happened. The Bible operates from a large level of mystery and ambiguity, and the Bible claims that faith is an overflowing gift from Christ, not absolute certainty attained through empirical data. But I do think that when the Bible is attacked from the other side using science, it needs to be defended just in order to be kept alive, not in order to be proven. It needs to be proven as a viable option for rational people because it is. And I find it to be a very helpful option. Anyways, that's enough screen time for you. After you like and subscribe, go ahead and take a walk outside. Don't let those jerk chipmunks get to you with their taunting laughter.
Nice hut! It's a good thing it's summer. Your girlfriend won't be needing it back anytime soon.